Alrighty. Hello, Jacksonites, and welcome back to Super Kaiju Binge. After some consideration, I have decided that I'm going to trim the fat a little bit with Super Kaiju Binge, and I'm not going to be reviewing a few movies. I'm not going to be reviewing Matango, not going to review Atragon, I'm not going to review the Daimajin trilogy, and I'm not going to review Latitude Zero, at least not yet. That and Battle in Outer Space and H-Man. I think I'm going to save all of those movies for like a future addendum series after Super Kaiju Binge is over. But for those of you who are going to ask in the future why those movies aren't included, that's why. I just decided to trim the fat a little bit. And also spurred on by the apparent success of my King Kong versus Godzilla video, with it getting 100 views in not even 2 days, which is surprising. I'm just going to keep plowing on with the Godzilla and pure monster Toho movies. So let's just jump right into the next one. And Shawnee Boy, unfortunately, is not available to join me for this episode. He just didn't have the time, and my schedule just did not allow me to wait. So I'll be reviewing this movie by myself. Today, I will be discussing in my eyes, classic Toho Kaiju masterpiece. That is 1964's Mothra versus Godzilla. Yes, indeed. Mothra versus Godzilla is quite a lot of things for both me, the Kaiju fan base, and the Godzilla series as a whole. Following the success of King Kong vs. Godzilla, Toho chose to pair Godzilla against Mothra for the franchise's following installment, with Mothra, of course, chosen due to the success of Mothra herself amongst Japanese moviegoers and also the success of the Mothra movie, which was apparently pretty big. And something I forgot to mention in my King Kong vs. Godzilla review, until Shin Godzilla rolled around, King Kong vs. Godzilla was the #1 highest grossing Godzilla movie of the entire Godzilla franchise for a long, long time. And also for a long, long time, I wondered why. Whatever. Ishiro Honda directly intended for this movie to be meant for children in addition to adults as a way to compete with television's growing popularity in Japan. This would also solidify the classic Showa Godzilla tone that the franchise would maintain up until Terror of Mechagodzilla, for the most part. And I'll explain what I mean by that later. This is also notably the last Godzilla movie in the Showa series to depict Godzilla solely as the villain. In the next movie, he starts out as a bad guy, but then he morphs into an anti-hero, and he stays an anti-hero up until Godzilla vs. Hedorah. But until then, this is the last time that Godzilla is purely the bad guy. And of the four Godzilla movies where Godzilla is the bad guy, much as I love Godzilla Raids Again, this is definitely my favorite. Mothra vs. Godzilla is a very interesting Godzilla movie for me because for the longest time, I wasn't a fan. I really wasn't a fan of this movie, despite the fact it being one of the very, very first Godzilla movies that I ever saw. I've said this before, and I'll say it again in the future, but the very first Godzilla movie of the entire franchise I ever saw was the 1998 Godzilla movie, but of the actual series, it was Godzilla 2000. And then, not long after that, I remember seeing both the original Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and the original Mothra vs. Godzilla on TV at one of my mom's friends' houses. And the scene where Godzilla rises out of the ground always stuck with me, and that's how I knew that this was Mothra. That movie was Mothra vs. Godzilla. And again, I got this movie relatively at a young age. I got it with the Godzilla. What the fuck is it called? The Godzilla box set. I'll just call it Classic Media. The Classic Media Godzilla box set. that my stepmom bought for me for my 5th birthday, or not 5th birthday, my however old I was in 5th grade. That's when she got it for me. And this was one of the last Godzilla movies on that set that I watched because I had a feeling that this is the movie that I remembered as a kid. Sure enough, it was. And just for some reason, I just wasn't a fan. I really wasn't a fan. I tried to like it for a very, very long time. And for some reason, I just couldn't do it. I kind of appreciated it because it wasn't a movie that I hated. It just wasn't a Godzilla movie that I was a big fan of. So after a couple years of really trying to like this movie, I just kind of let it sit there for a long while. And it wasn't until back when I was in high school when I was having my resurgence in um in Godzilla movies resurface again due to Godzilla 2014 was when I finally decided to get around to rewatching Mothra vs. Godzilla. And I saw, because at this time I was really into audio commentaries for film. And I saw that this, of course, has the audio commentary with Steve Reifel and Ed Gottschalski. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to watch this movie with the audio commentary. And that's when the movie just clicked with me. The audio commentary does have a lot to do with my opinion changing on this, but I have since watched the movie a few times without the audio commentary. And my opinion on this film definitely has changed for the better. I now do consider this to be one of the best Godzilla movies of the entire franchise. Maybe not quite one of my favorite Godzilla movies, but if I was to have a runner-up list, I would definitely put this on there. But I really do highly respect this movie, and I do consider this to be one of the best Godzilla movies ever made. And I also consider this to be Ishiro Honda's best Godzilla movie. Maybe not his best monster movie overall, but definitely his best Godzilla movie. I do think this movie is in every which way, shape, or form better than the original Godzilla. And in many ways, it is better than, in many, many ways, it's better than Godzilla's Revenge and King Kong versus Godzilla. Like, this was one of those times where a studio got to work making a movie. There was no preconceived notions. There was no troubled production. There was no delays. There was no halts. They just knew what they wanted to make. They knew how to make it, and everybody was working in perfect sync, in perfect clockwork. And this, the result of that is one of the best monster movies ever made, in my opinion. And this was also unfortunately the turn in Ishiro Honda's career, because seemingly after this movie, some kind of switch went off in him and he just got tired of making monster movies. This has been stated many, many times before, and for those of you who are familiar with Adam Noyes' Ishiro Honda-thon will know that toward the end of Ishiro Honda's career, from here on up until 1975, Ishiro Honda was not a big fan of making kaiju movies. But thankfully, I would definitely say that his enthusiasm for the genre reached its peak with this movie, and it really does show in the final product. Every single aspect of this movie works perfectly. Every character is well thought out. Every scene is well put in. The pacing is perfect, and overall, this is a masterpiece film. So we'll get to all that stuff when we get to the movies where it's really noticeable on how Ishiro Honda really did not want to make this movie. But with this movie, everybody knew what they wanted to do. Everybody knew how they wanted to do it. And everybody was having a total blast making this movie, and it really does show. And I had a total blast rewatching the movie before I did this review. So with all that being said, let's jump into the plot of Mothra vs. Godzilla. But first, a word from our sponsor. No, the soda is not the sponsor. I just wanted to say that. And now the word has been given. Alrighty. Oh, and by the way, I will be discussing the American cut of Mothra versus Godzilla, mostly because I consider the American cut of Mothra versus Godzilla to be the superior version, mostly because it is a little bit longer. It has one of the best dubs of any Godzilla movie that I've ever seen. Um, and it's also pretty much in its exact intact shape. A couple scenes are shuffled around from the Japanese cut, but other than that, this movie is pretty much untouched when it was released internationally, except for an extended military battle, which I'll get to a little later. But anyway, the movie begins. A typhoon hits Japan, and once again the plot for Mothra versus Godzilla is pretty straightforward, but it's all for the better because it's a well-told, straightforward story. The movie begins with a massive typhoon wrecking the shit of the Japanese landscape. And then next morning, news reporter Ichiro Sakai, played by Akira Takarada, and photographer Junko Nakanishi, played by Yuriko Hoshi, take pictures of the wreckage, and they uncover a strange bluish gray object in the debris, not knowing of its significance. Later that day, a giant egg is discovered on the shore, and the local villagers salvage it, and Kumayama, played by Yoshifumi Tajima, who is an entrepreneur of Happy Enterprises, buys the egg from the local villagers for a really weird price. I don't remember quite what it was, but it wasn't even 1,000,000 yen. Instead of letting scientists study the egg, Kumiyama intends to exploit it while Sakai, Junko, and Professor Miura, played by Hiroshi Koizumi, are discussing the egg at a hotel. They spot Kumiyama checking in. Kumiyama meets with local business tycoon Jiro Torahata, played by Kenji Sahara, the head of Happy Enterprises. They are unexpectedly confronted by tiny twin girls known as the Shobijin, once again played by the Peanuts, and try to capture them. The Shobijin escape and meet with Sakai, Nakanishi, and Miura, and they explain to them that the egg belongs to Mothra, of course. If the egg hatches, the larva will cause great damage looking for food and to return back to its island. The trio agree to try to help and attempt to reason with Kumiyama and Torahata, but utterly fail to get through the thick-brained, pig-headed business tycoon idiots. And the Shobijin leave in the process after Kumiyama offers to buy the Shobijin from the three characters. Miura informs Sakai and Junko that the strange object they discovered is radioactive, and they return to the beach to find the source, which has, of course, been drained of all of its ocean water. However, during this, Godzilla surfaces from being buried under the mud and attacks Nagoya. Sakai, Junko, and Miura travel to Infant Island to request the Shobijin to send Mothra to defeat Godzilla. The natives and the Shobijin initially refuse due to the atrocities inflicted on Infant Island from nuclear testing, but they are eventually convinced when Junko decides to pull a Fey Ray and just pull out the tears and say, "Please help us, we're all humans." It works, though. The Shobijin then warn them that Mothra is too old and is nearing death and will not have the strength to return to Infant Island after battling Godzilla. Kumayama confronts Torahata and demands to get back all the money that Torahata had swindled from him. However, trying to steal it from him, Kumayama is shot by Torahata, and then he too is killed when Godzilla destroys his hotel. Godzilla advances on the giant egg, however, he is interrupted by Mothra, and the two engage into a fight. Mothra initially gains the upper hand, however, he is defeated by Godzilla's atomic breath and dies of exhaustion. The JSDF proceed to launch multiple attacks on Godzilla, which are some of the best scenes of the entire franchise, until the two giant Mothra larvae hatch from their egg. They follow Godzilla to Iwa Island and engage in another brief battle with Godzilla and proceed to wrap him up in a silky cocoon and force Godzilla into the sea. Not killing Godzilla, but just defeating him. Sakai, Junko, and Miura thank the two Mothra larvae and the Shobijin as they return to Infant Island, thus ending the film. So, what do I think of this plot? No. So, what do I think of this plot? Well, you know what? Like I said, it's very well thought out. It's well planned. Nothing feels like it was forced in. Nothing feels like it was sadly removed. They just knew what they wanted to make. They knew what they wanted to do, and they made it how they wanted to. And the result is perfect. It's one of the most well told, well balanced, entertaining, thoughtful, and just greatest monster movies ever made. Need I say more? So, what are the pros of Mothra versus Godzilla? I have I have 10 pros for Mothra versus Godzilla. Pro number 1 is the cast. This movie has, well, the main trio of characters. This is a very common thing amongst the Ishiro Honda movies where they would have a main trio of main characters throughout the film. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Like you either had one or two characters that were engrossing and the others were just boring, or you had the even rare examples where the trio of characters are all boring like in the original Godzilla. But in this case, the main three characters in this movie, there's other side characters that are good too, but the main three are all great. They're all well acted, they're all well written, and they're fun and entertaining to watch. The first of which, of course, being Akira Takarada as Ichiro Sakai. I wouldn't really say he's the main character, but I think he is the first that we see, so I'll just call him the main character. Though again, it's really these main three that are the main characters of this movie. But Akira Takarada definitely has improved since the original Godzilla, and well, I would hope so because it was 10 years after the original. His acting definitely has improved since then. His acting is a lot more natural. It doesn't feel wooden or forced. His lines are all delivered well. He comes off kind of as a grumpy, bitter, I know all this about the world of photography and journalism and all this. And at times he comes off as being a little smug and full of himself, but he has a touch of humor to him. And overall, he's not a bad guy. He just takes his job very, very seriously. Let's see. What's her name? Yuriko Hoshi as Junko Nakanishi does a great job as a female character. The first fucking Ishiro Honda female character probably ever that I would actually say is really, really good. She is the voice of reason of the three. She's the one who really reasons and connects to the Infant Islanders in their heartstrings and says, hey, eventually Godzilla will destroy Tokyo and may come after you guys too. So if you guys don't yank your head out of your asses, you may get screwed as well. But we're all humans. At some point, we need to just drop our preconceived notions and just work together to solve a giant crisis. She's not wrong. And again, she has a slight touch of humor to her because the first 25 minutes or so, she has this little running gag with Akira Takarada's character where she can just never figure out how to make a full, really good picture. Either she takes too long to set the camera up to get one shot, or she takes a photo but it's too bright of a flash, or she takes a camera and the asshole blows smoke in the camera. She never gets a good picture. And there's this great little banter that she has with Akira Takarada's character that doesn't really come off as being malicious. It's just it's a little humorous. It's a little hard to describe. You have to watch it. It's like it's just kind of playful banter. And it's fun to watch. And of course, Hiroshi Koizumi as Professor Miura. He's fantastic. This is one of my favorite roles that Hiroshi Koizumi plays in a Godzilla movie. He is a bit dry at times, a little bit, especially in the beginning of the movie. Like he's just, hey, leave me alone. I'm working. Can I please ask a question? No, go away. But please, sir, just one. It's really important. No, go away. But as the movie goes on, he kind of comes out of his shell and he gets to know Akira Takarada and Yuriko Hoshi's characters. And he opens up and they all agree to work together to solve a problem. And he becomes a likable character. His dryness is still there a little bit, but he more comes off as just being a no nonsense scientist. Like, hey, this stuff is kind of serious. All my research is proven to be correct. Why are you guys choosing to ignore me? Why does that sound familiar? So yeah, Hiroshi Koizumi does a great job as Professor Miura, and he's one of the few characters in all of Showa Godzilla to be a repeat character because he plays the same character in the next Godzilla movie, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. But we'll get to that when we get to that. The rest of the human cast, not talking about the villains quite yet. Really, there's not much to say other than there's Jun Tazaki as editor Murata, who's kind of like Japanese Perry White from the Superman franchise. This is honestly my favorite role of Jun Tazaki in any Toho Kaiju movie that he's ever been in. He's all right in Atragon. He's insufferable in War of the Gargantuas. And he's okay in King Kong versus Godzilla. But here, this is my favorite because he really is just like Japanese Perry White. At times, he's almost compassionate, and he's like a good boss that works in tandem with all of his employees. Like, hey, you work on this. Okay, you get that done. You work on this, and you do what you do to get it done. I'll work from here and get my shit done. But then, literally at the snap of a finger or the turn of a dime, he just turns into this nasty, bitter, angry asshole of an editor. And it's just like Perry White from Superman. But Jun Tazaki plays it off very, very, very well and very convincing. It doesn't come off as being hokey or over the top. It just comes off as him being a very short-tempered, temperamental boss. Again, just like Perry White. So he's great. And I can't remember the name of this guy. No, it's not too. Maybe Yu Fujiki. Yeah, this is him. Yu Fujiki as Jiro Nakamura, who he's kind of like the comic relief of this movie. He doesn't have that many scenes, but his gimmick is that he likes to eat eggs. And there's 3 scenes where he pops up where he's eating an egg. His first scene is, hey, what are you doing? Enjoying an egg. Oh, enjoying an egg while you're writing a story about a giant egg, eh? And the look on his face is like, oh. And then they're trying to figure out, hey, when will this egg hatch? This egg took 7 minutes to boil. If you take this and multiply it by 1 billion, you'll get your answer. And his final scene is he comes over holding a big pan, which presumably had scrambled or fried eggs in it. He says, oh, no, I got to keep watching the egg. I'd rather deal with Godzilla than the editor. He's meaner. Again, it's not over-the-top humor like it is in King Kong versus Godzilla. It's just subtle, clever writing. But yeah, this movie has a fantastic cast. And this will lead me into pro number 2, the villains. The main, well, not Godzilla, the human villains are total scumbags. Kumayama is just this total slime bag, smug, self-absorbed prick that as soon as you see him, especially with his Hitler stash, as soon as you see him, you just want to punch him in the face. And he has this really smug, asshole, full of himself smile. And one of the most iconic scenes of any character in any Godzilla movie is where he says, oh, okay, yeah, go ahead, take my picture. takes a drag off his cigar. Oh, that picture ought to be perfect. Fucking dickhead. And Kenji Sahara, oh my god, he's even more. He kind of reminds me of Carl Nelson, or not Carl, Clark Nelson from the original Mothra. He's got this real smug, shit-eating grin on his face whenever he's on screen and trying to swindle people out of money. And he really comes off as being a cocky, slimy sleazeball. But he's so fun to watch. And watching these two collaborate together, you'd almost want to see a movie like a political thriller or a crime drama with these two as the lead villains. These are really, really some of the greatest villains of the entire Godzilla franchise, and they get surprisingly really violent and brutal deaths. Kumayama gets shot. You don't see any blood, but Kenji Sahara gets his freaking nose blasted into his face, and there's blood all over his nose and his mouth. It's pretty violent, surprisingly, for an Ishiro Honda movie. And of course, Torahata gets crushed by Godzilla swinging his tail and smacking into the hotel. They get great deaths, and it's only fitting that great villains get great deaths. Shit. Pro number 3 is the humor. Now, once again, this movie's humor is not like King Kong versus Godzilla. That's not how you do humor unless you're intentionally trying to make the movie just goofy and slapsticky. With King Kong versus Godzilla, you get the sense that they were trying to make it a much more serious Godzilla film, but just all this over-the-top slapsticky humor just stuck out like a sore thumb. This movie's humor, for one, it fits, but also two, it's not goofy. It's kind of subtle, and I would actually describe it more as just like situational humor, where again you have the egg dude just being himself. He comes off a little weird, but that's what makes it funny. It also helps that the actor's physical comedy, like his facial expressions and his body language and his goofy, dopey smile, just kind of makes you chuckle. And watching Japanese Perry White just turn on a dime and turn into a dickweed, it's fun to watch. But Akira Takarada's character has his own moments of humor too. There's two that stick out. One is when all three of them were looking for the Shobi gene, and they were like, "Where the hell is she?" Oh wait, no, probably outside next to Mothra. Whack! And he smacks his head against the smacks his head against the table that they were all under. And then the second one was when he was on Infant Island, and he was like saying, "Drink this." Here, I'll just demonstrate. Hey, drink this. Oh. Yeah. Sorry. And he gets it all over his face. Gets all over his face a little bit. It's not goofy, and it doesn't make you like hold your sides like you're laughing so hard, but it makes you snicker, and it's just really good situational humor, which results from clever writing. And had this movie been written by Takashi Kimura, this movie really would not have worked. Thankfully, this was wrote by my favorite of the two main Toho writers, that being Shinichi Sekizawa. And this will lead me into pro number 4, this movie's tone. In my opinion, this has the best kind of Showa Godzilla tone that a lot of the series would maintain for the rest of the series. Showa series, that is. It's a well-balanced mix of dark and light. I do like this kind of tone for my monster movie. You can have it be dark, and you can have it be kind of gritty and serious, but you can have some moments of levity and a little bit of humor. And you also have to have the humor be really subtle. You can't do King Kong versus Godzilla where you'll have serious moments And then you'll just have these ridiculously over-the-top, goofy moments to the point where it just feels like God, I'm shitting all over King Kong versus Godzilla. But it feels like almost two different movies in one film. Here, the dark and the light blend together very well, and it doesn't feel jarring or clunky. It just feels like that's how the situation progresses. You go from Godzilla killing two people in a hotel rather brutally to the egg dude saying, "Oh, I gotta watch over the egg. I don't want to deal with the editor." It just feels natural, and this movie's tone is perfectly executed, in my opinion. Like I said, Shinichi Sekizawa can do dark stuff, but he knows that you got to add a little bit of humor and a little bit of relief to make the movie flow that much better and have a more consistent tone. And I have to rewatch some later Godzilla movies and monster movies, but as of right now, I think this may be the best example of Shinichi Sekizawa balancing dark and light. I think he also did Invasion of the Astro Monster too, so I may have to eat my words. But this movie's tone is fantastic, in my opinion. Pro number 5 is the music. Oh my God, does Akira Ifukube return with a massive vengeance in this film? This is where a lot of classic Showa era Godzilla music is introduced. Like you have the classic dun 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 theme, which is awesome. It plays over the opening credits of the film, and it's just great to listen to. And then it leads into the Godzilla March, which is just awesome. And for some reason, listening to that music just over a simple shot of a typhoon going off, it's really fun, and it's really, really fitting. And again, it kind of gives you an idea of the tone that you're going to be getting into. It's big, dark, and epic, but also entertaining, but not scary at the same time. I would definitely say this is one of my favorite moments, or not moments. This is one of my favorite Godzilla scores of the entire franchise, in my opinion. Once again, everybody just seemed like they were at the top of their game with this movie, and everyone was just clicking and working like perfect clockwork. The Mothra music sounds really good. The Godzilla March music sounds really good. When the music is quieter, it's really fitting. When it's big, loud, and bombastic during the action scenes, it's perfectly fitting. It's just really, really fucking great music, and it goes to show that Akira Ifukube is one of the greatest music composers that ever lived. Pro number 6 is this movie is paced perfectly. No scene drags. No scene feels slow. No scene feels shoved in, and nothing feels like it was edited out. Except maybe the last 15 minutes or so. The movie does run a little bit out of steam, but just because the characters run out of stuff to do by the end of the film. But that's compensated by the fact that it's actually really fun watching these two Mothra larvae take on Godzilla and do a surprisingly well job of defeating him. But in terms of the characters, they run a little bit out of steam toward the end of the movie, but it's understandable why. But still, the pacing in this movie is pitch perfect. I wouldn't have had it any different way. Nothing feels not important to the story. Every scene feels essential, and every moment of the movie feels perfect. John Williams. I can kind of see that. Akira Ifukube being Japanese John Williams. Either him or Jerry Goldsmith. Pro number 7 is the allegory. This is not satire. This is the same thing that was incorporated into King Kong versus Godzilla, but here it's way more subtle. It's way, way, way more subtle. There, it really did feel like shoved down your throat PSA satire. Here, the allegory is still anti-capitalism and anti-exploitation, but here it's done in a much more cohesive and subtle manner. Ishiro Honda shows that these assholes are trying to exploit this Mothra egg for money. It's clear that's what they're trying to do, but Ishiro Honda doesn't shove it down your throat. He just shows you, hey, these guys are the bad guys. They're trying to make money by exploiting an innocent party. That's not cool. And it also showcases that there's a little bit of anti-nuclear energy message into this movie as well, with the Infant Islanders not wanting to help because they were besieged by nuclear fire. He also shows, hey, that's not cool. But despite that, we still need to come together to solve a big problem, because Ishiro Honda was a diehard pacifist. It's all very well executed. Not quite as subtle as some of other Ishiro Honda allegories out there. Like, it's not like The Thing, where you can take that movie at face value but not get any underlying messages. Here, the face value is his message, but once again, Ishiro Honda doesn't go overboard with it. He shows you his deck of cards, but then that's it. He says, hey, this stuff is bad. We need to stop doing it. And that's perfectly fine. He doesn't go overboard with it, which is great. Why is my hand orange? Oh, it's because of my light. Okay. Sorry. Anyway, so yeah, the allegory of this movie is very, very well executed. I'd say it's one of the best handled of the entire franchise. And once again, it just shows that Ishiro Honda was on the top of his game. Pro number 8 is monster battles. There's only 2. There's Godzilla versus Mothra, and then there's Godzilla versus Mothra larvae. I actually do kind of prefer the Mothra versus larvae battle, even though as a kid I absolutely hated it because I don't want Godzilla to be defeated. Well, duh, it makes sense. He's the bad guy, but whatever. It's very well edited. It's very well choreographed. It goes through a lot of stages. Some may see it as being kind of dull, but I think it was very well executed. It was very well pulled off. I really enjoy the Godzilla versus larvae battle. But the actual fight of Godzilla versus Butterfly Mothra, not nearly one of my favorite Godzilla fights, but it is entertaining and it's well done for what they could show and what they could do. It's obvious that the Godzilla prop they used and the Mothra prop were of different sizes than the suit and the puppet, which is what they did for some shots. But then they also had the Mothra puppet itself be on screen with Akira, Haruo Nakajima in the Godzilla suit on set. And those shots all look really good. Goes to show the actual size of the Mothra puppet that they were using, which was quite large. It's well edited for the most part. I'd say it's pretty well balanced. Like Godzilla and Mothra just keep trading blows on an even pace until Godzilla's endurance wins and he just blasts Mothra out of the sky. But Mothra has some pretty good tricks up her sleeve. She's got the hurricane winds to blow Godzilla all over the landscape. She picks him up by his tail and drags him all over the countryside, smacks him with her wings and her legs. It's a pretty entertaining fight. Not that long either. I think it's maybe 5 or 6 minutes. But for what it is pretty entertaining. Again, not one of my favorites, but it's still good. Pro number 9 is all of the attack scenes. What I love about this movie and what I realized on this most recent viewing is at least 60% of this movie is just Godzilla attacking cities and fighting with the military. And all of them are so entertaining to watch. They're really, for me, the biggest highlight of this movie. There's multiple stages to this, so it never gets dull. They fight at night, during the day. He fights planes. He fights tanks. He fights giant electricity shooting towers. He fights the American Navy. He goes through so much shit. Godzilla goes through so much shit in this movie, which I'll add another pro too, is Godzilla himself in this movie is fucking awesome. He's just an unstoppable force, and an immovable object all rolled into one in this movie. He's a total unstoppable tank. To quote James Rolfe, he just keeps trudging forward, demolishing everything in his path like a freak of nature. It's very, very fun to watch, and the all the scenes where Godzilla's destroying shit is very, very entertaining. The attack scenes are all very fun to watch. Again, there's multiple different stages, but these are some of the best military versus Godzilla scenes. Definitely the entire Showa series, but I'd also argue of the entire Godzilla franchise. All of the attack scenes are very, very, very well done. And pro number 10 is well, actually, no, 11, because I'll say 10 is Godzilla himself. He's very fun to watch. He's a total badass walking tank in this movie. So pro number 11 is the special effects in this movie are phenomenal, are utterly phenomenal. The miniature sets are very, very well constructed, like Nagoya Castle getting destroyed. That looks very well detailed. It's very well sculpted. And he actually had to redo that scene a couple times because it was made a little too well. So Hiro Nakajima had a little bit of difficulty tearing it apart. That tower that Godzilla gets his tail stuck in looks really good, and it looks great when Godzilla destroys it. All the explosions look really good, including a scene where the Godzilla suit famously caught fire. There is a quick scene where Godzilla's head was coated in flames. Hiro Nakajima, I believe, was not injured, but they said it looked so cool, they just left it in the film. Yeah, all the explosions look great. The pyrotechnics look awesome. The miniature tanks look very convincing, and they move great. The optical effects for Godzilla's atomic breath look way better. And probably my favorite military attack scene is when Godzilla fights all the electrical towers, especially when they start dropping all these giant metal nets all over him in order to conduct more electricity. That's probably my favorite military fight in the whole movie, because Godzilla gets put on his ass at one point, but then he just gets back up and lays waste to everything around him. He blows everything around him out of the water, blows up tanks, blows up the towers, blows up the planes, blows up everything. He just is like, I don't give a fuck. Burn. It's so fun to watch. And overall, more. The Mothra larvae look really, really good. They move like, well, they don't really move like actual crocodiles, but they move very well. They don't move in a herky-jerky manner. They just move naturally, and their movement looks great. The silk spray effects look great. Mothra butterfly form, flying and flapping around, looks really, really solid. When the Mothra larvae hatch from their egg, that looks awesome. The lighting effects are great. The sets are great, especially for Infant Island. That looks way better than Mothra, in my opinion, like the original Mothra movie. Overall, the special effects in this movie are absolutely 100% top-notch, except for one aspect. The only problem that I have with the effects in this movie, and I don't give it that much grief, Eiji Tsuburaya managed to get his hands on a little piece of technology that is called the optical printer. At the time, there was only 3 of these things in existence, and Eiji Tsuburaya managed to get his hands on one. I don't exactly know what the thing was used for, but I think it may have just been like an alternative for blue screen effects. There is some blue screen work done in this movie, and it doesn't look bad per se, but like with the optical printer shots, a lot of them don't look that great, unfortunately. And they mostly have to do with Godzilla. There's a lot of shots where you can see Godzilla walking by in the background, and you can see the Japanese landscape in the foreground. Then you see Godzilla in the background, and a lot of those optical printer shots don't look that great, unfortunately. Some of them look fine, mostly when Godzilla's really close and you see only like his head and his neck. But when you see like from his waist up in the background, Godzilla looks really faded and really blurry, and it's very obvious that they're optical printer shots. But the ones that look really good is when they're used on the Shobijin. There's still obviously optical printer shots, but they still look very, very well done. They don't look faded. They don't look cartoony. They don't look blurry. They look like an effect, but they still look like good, well done, well executed effects. So, yeah, that's the only issue with the effects, is that some of the optical printer shots aren't that great, unfortunately. But it was the first time that Age of Samurai was using the optical printer, so it's a little understandable and a little forgivable. But still, if you see some of the optical printer effects of Godzilla, you will be able to tell, because they do look pretty damn blurry and pretty damn, I don't want to say bad, but I'll just say poor, for a lack of a better term. Pardon the noise too. My neighbors are a bunch of fuckwads. With all this great stuff to say about this movie, do I have any cons? Nope. Well, short of that minor flaw with the effects and the minor flaw of the pacing running a little bit out of steam towards the end. But other than that, no, I have no cons with this movie. This is a fantastic film. I didn't really think this review would be this kind of short, but yeah, that's all I have to say about Mothra versus Godzilla. This is a great fucking movie. I really, really do appreciate this movie a lot more than I used to. I consider it to be one of the best monster movies ever made, one of the best Godzilla movies ever made, and easily is Ishiro Honda's best Godzilla movie. It's better than the original Godzilla. It's more entertaining. It's more well made. It's more engaging. It's more interesting, and it's just a better movie. Like, this is art. The original Godzilla is art too, but this is entertaining art. The original Godzilla is just academic, important art, if you catch my drift. 10 out of 10. Perfect 10 out of 10 rating for Mothra vs. Godzilla. If you are a diehard Godzilla fan and you have not seen Mothra vs. Godzilla, still, you really need to do yourself a favor and you need to go out and watch Mothra vs. Godzilla. It's a phenomenal film. If you're not much of a Mothra fan, get past that and watch this movie. If you're not a big Showa fan, get past that and watch this movie. Mothra vs. Godzilla is an awesome, 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 awesome movie. And with that being said, post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button and share this video with your friends. Go join my Facebook group, Jacksonite Productions Official, where you can post videos, promote yourself, start discussion topics, and just be the nerd that you want to be. And look forward to future episodes of Super Kaiju Binge after tomorrow's video, where I will be taking a slight break. Not because I'm bored of Super Kaiju Binge, but because I'm going to be doing a video that I've been wanting to redo for a while. Now that I've seen at that point, I will have seen the entire franchise, where me and Jeff from Unigamer661 rank the entire Friday the 13th franchise. But until then, as always, go out and if you see a giant egg on the coming ashore after a typhoon, leave it alone, because nothing good will ever come about if you ever try to exploit it. And I will see you guys in the next video.